where progress is influenced by revolution and evolution. We're today's News Talk, TNT.
Now, we talk a lot about modern day internet censorship here, but I want to take people back even before the COVID-19 84 nightmare, when my YouTube channel was still monetized. It hadn't been taken down several times. There was certainly some demonetization on videos, but nothing had ever been censored like the manner when I covered our next guest daring to say the magic words Eric Ciaramella in December of 2019. We have Congressman Louie Gohmert, and let's just start with this. You know, I have that video up in my studio to this day. I've held on to the YouTube, but it is literally locked and private throughout the entire world in every region, and I am the only one that can view it. Now, the bag on that is that I never said Eric Ciaramella. When you were in Congress talking about his name, you were not talking about him specifically in any other manner than you would like to interview him. And yet YouTube took it upon himself to not only censor you and people like myself, but Rand Paul, who dared to say those magic words. First of all, in retrospect, that should have been one of the canaries in the coal mine with this big tech government collusion. A lot of people have largely forgotten about that. I haven't. What are your thoughts on that and where it went from there and where we are today, sir?
Well, where we are today is with Elon Musk being the only thing standing between social media's total devotion to a Marxist takeover of the U.S. government and actually having a social media that allows people to have social interactions with people without the Ministry of Truth coming in and shutting them down. For those that are not familiar with the Ministry of Truth, George Orwell in the late 1940s wrote about it, and it really has a lot of application to today, especially if you look at the way the January 6th defendants were treated. But Orwell wrote about the Ministry of Truth would rewrite history every day to make sure that the government was shown in the best light. And if you disagreed with anything about what the Ministry of Ministry of Truth said, they would show up at your place and take you into custody, take you to the basement of this big building. And I said this is the Ministry of Love. The Ministry of Love would take you and torture you until you not only said you agreed, but they made sure you really did agree 2 + 2 = 5 and whatever else they told you. And that's where we have moved. I've said before, Jason, the only thing Orwell got wrong was the year. It wasn't 1984. It's now. But this is Big Brother spying and look at conservatives who supported Trump, who had concerns about President Obama. They were whistleblowers. I've got a number of friends who were real whistleblowers. They weren't hearsay conveyors like reportedly Ciaramella was. They were real, genuine whistleblowers, and they were hounded, driven out of government, and treated despicably. So there's a two-tiered system, not just in the Department of Justice in America, but also in most parts of the federal government.
So let me just comment on a few things that you just said there. The only thing you really kept out of 1984 was, of course, the telescreens, the screens that also watched you. Hey, guess what, folks? 100% they still do that. And I would also argue that as spot on as Orwell was, you got to mix in a little bit of Huxley, Brave New World, hypersexualized society with a side of Soma, aka a drugged up populace, and you really almost have exactly what we have today. Now, you talked about whistleblowers at the end there, and this has been going on for a very, very long time in my mind. Real whistleblowers are prosecuted. I think that laid the ground. You look at somebody, for instance, like John Kiriakou, who blew the whistle on waterboarding, did prison time. You mentioned the January 6th people. Now we're at the point, whether or not you agree with somebody like Enrique Tarrio, you can hate him as a person. You cannot like the Proud Boys. Hell, you could even believe an insurrection happened on January 6th. Obviously, I don't believe that, but believe it. Enrique Tarrio wasn't in D.C., let alone the Capitol that day, and he has now been successfully prosecuted to serve 2 decades in prison. So we have moved from just not only prosecuting whistleblowers, but people that are simply political opponents with thought crimes, essentially.
That's so true. And you bring up the whistleblower on waterboarding, and, it may be that his biggest crime was that by exposing waterboarding and Pelosi self-righteously making a big deal about it, it did her and her party great damage when it came out that actually she was part of the group of 8 that were okay with the waterboarding secretly. She just didn't know that was going to come out. So, yeah, he exposed Pelosi as not only being okay with waterboarding, at least in secret, but as also being quite hypocritical. So that may have been why they went after him so strongly. You never know. But nonetheless, it is critical that we not have so many secrets. And by the way, the National Security Council was never intended to have 400 or more members. And those are people that have top secret security clearances. And that's how some of them could spy in on and get information about Trump's phone calls. The Democrats do a lot better job of, having people disappear that turn them in for some impropriety. But for example, H.R. McMaster, general in the military, it was reported that he is one that actually brought Eric Ciamella into the National Security Council. And that was a guy that was a protege with helping Susan Rice.
And let me stop you just for a second. For those that don't know, he was brought into the Trump administration very, very early on, actually. And, that was here's the thing. Number one, I think that we do need a lot more transparency. We need to get into that the next segment. But you look at somebody like McMaster who gets brought in, whether it's McMaster or Bolton or Mattis, these guys aren't our friends. And there hasn't been any accountability for their actions behind the scenes in this manner for some time. I remember McMaster, he was immediately after that position, him and Liddell were both at Bilderberg 2017. That's a hardcore player meeting. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk transparency and the promises from the Trump administration if they should get in. I also, if you want to comment on it, want to get your take on the assassination attempt and the lack of any accountability or investigation into that as well. Really great show right now. Congressman Louie Gohmert with us. We can't have a better show than right now. We'll be back with more TNT after this.
Now, TNT Radio News.
Newsflash! Now, without further ado,
Matt Boyland here with a look at your TNT headlines. Beijing says it has no intention of entering into a nuclear arms race with the US, saying it's Washington who poses the biggest nuclear threat in the world, not China. Russia's foreign ministry has accused Ukraine of violating international law over its treatment of the traditional Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And speaking behind bulletproof glass, Donald Trump has held his first outdoor campaign rally since last month's attempted assassination.
Today's news. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. Without checking facts first. Unfortunately, it's a legal thing, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Free speech has a home on TNT.
We are back, and Congressman, kind of just in between the break there, we were talking about the lists that you've been put on. And people know, I've been doing this now for 20 years. I've been politically homeless for the whole thing. I always say it's not about right or left. It's always about right and wrong. There have been a handful of politicians that I've had some respect for over the years. You are one of those people, and you were kind of mentioning and giggling about how, well, I'm glad I'm on somebody's good list, because the Republican establishment, they also have come after you, no?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I got put on the do not donate list. If you want to have any input into the Republican Party legislation, you will not donate to this guy. And yeah, that was a list I was on. But fortunately, I was all over my 12-county district all the time. I knew the people around the district. They trusted me. And so even when I got outspent 3-1 trying to take me out in a primary with another Republican, I still won with 82% of the vote, even though I was outspent 3-1, because the people here knew me. So, they finally gave up. We're not going to be able to take this guy out. The people like him too much back home. And so that gives you a lot of freedom as a representative, because you really get to represent them. You don't have to bow and scrape and curtsy to whoever is the Republican in power.
Well, I would also argue, you don't necessarily have to bend the knee to the donor class. I think that's one of the big problems with our modern day political society is modern day lobbying, and how so many of these people that are government officials are in and out of the corporate world as well. Let's talk accountability really quickly.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump has now said that he will declassify the JFK and 9/11 documents. Promised the JFK documents the first time around. Very disappointed that we didn't get all of them. The ones that we did get, there was some good stuff in there. But then you have someone like Tucker Carlson, who I'm sure that you know, come out and talk about the fact that Michael Pompeo is the one that pressured him into not putting those all out. Pompeo was just speaking at the RNC. I hope there's no place for him in this next administration if it happens. But do you think we'll get those documents, not just JFK, but RFK, MLK, like Bannon has said, and especially 9/11? And if we do, and we reveal those wounds, can we shore them up and have some kind of reformation of our constitutional republic? These agencies are obviously out of control. One of the things that I liked about Ramaswamy was saying, I'm going to come in day one, Social Security style, slash them in half, and then we're going to go from there and weed out the corruption. If we've got to replace these agencies with something constitutional, that's what we'll do.
Yeah. And I do think that President Trump in another term will release these things that he intended to and he got talked out of. And keep in mind, Mike Pompeo was negotiating, as Obama had. He was negotiating with the Taliban, with our enemy, to let us get out of Afghanistan. And I had a very unpleasant conversation with him, telling him, after having a number of times visited with our allies in Afghanistan, the Northern Alliance that have fought and defeated the Taliban within 6 months of 9/11, it was incredible. And we didn't lose a single American. We had about 300 embedded. And what they kept saying was, you forced this constitution on us where the president has all of the power in Afghanistan. We want to have a federalist type government like you do, where we have state government and we elect our governors, we elect our mayors, we pick our own police chiefs. And then
let me just stop you for a second right there for one moment. Look at what they did. They installed Hamid Karzai, a Chevron executive, and then on top of that, his brother Walid Karzai ends up being one of the top warlords in the region in the opium trade until he's taken out. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. And I know that was never mainstream, but that's reality, right?
Yeah. Well, in one of my conversations with Masood, Zia Masood, his brother, Imam Masood, was the Lion of Panjshir. He was the big hero of the war with Russia, and the Taliban assassinated him within 2 days of 9/11. But Masood, this is, 14 years ago, he was saying, look, it's not good for you to stay here forever. It doesn't work out well. And we were so grateful, but you're going to have to leave at some point. And if you would just help us amend our Constitution with one amendment. I said, what makes you think we can get your Constitution amendment? And he said, do you know how much our annual budget is in Afghanistan, the government? No. He said, in your dollars, maybe 12 billion. You know how much of that you pay? No. Well, in your dollars, about 10 billion. If you demand we amend our Constitution, it will get done. All we want to do is elect our governors, the president appointed the governors, appointed the mayors, appointed police chiefs. It sounded like old Roman days where, you got an appointment based on how much you gave to these people. It was a terrible corruption we set up. And he said, if you let us elect those, then when you leave, we'll have our own militia again in our own provinces. And the Taliban will try to take over, but we can band together and then we can whip them. But if you just leave the way it is, the Taliban will take over everything. They'll kill all of us. And Jason, that's what happened. But Pompeo was against that. He wanted to continue negotiating with the Taliban. And actually, the Biden administration just did a follow-up on Pompeo, continuing to negotiate. Now, President Trump would never have allowed to happen what happened when it was basically a surrender by the Biden administration. Trump would never have allowed that to happen, but that's what Pompeo was working on. I would prefer that he not have a position like that again.
Final topic, you bring up Trump. Obviously, we're about 6-7 weeks almost out from the assassination attempt on Trump that the media doesn't want to talk about, that there doesn't seem to be an investigation on, other than Ron Johnson trying to put together his own investigation, some citizen investigations out there. What are your thoughts on this? Because to me, the official story seems to have more holes than Swiss cheese. I don't think that we've gotten a straight answer, and I don't necessarily think that Trump is out of the proverbial crossfire. And, we're on the run up to November, but let's say he gets in November, they still got to swear him in January. And then that's really where the fun begins. So what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for bringing that up because it is so important. We haven't gotten straight answers, and the Congress is not good about getting complete answers. Judicial Watch gets more information by going to court and getting court orders than our congressional committees do. They got good sound bites, but nothing more despicable has happened at the Democrat convention than to have the former president Obama, who he completely redid the Secret Service when his appointments person would not go to the Secret Service for a Christmas party and tell them who got in and who didn't. And a couple got in that shouldn't have because his administration said, I'll let them in. So they redid the Secret Service. That guy, can you imagine? And let me tell you, during his administration, I prayed literally that he would never be assassinated. It'd be so bad for the country. But he had the nerve to stand up there in front of the convention and not mention the assassination, but continue to stir up hate toward Donald Trump. This is a guy that claims he wanted to bring America together, but he did more to divide America than any other president we've ever had. And so for him not to at least mention that and say, hey, folks, we cannot let it get violent like this. We have got to, Trump is ridiculed about January 6th, but he was saying peacefully do these things. And with Obama, calling President Trump a whiner. Can you imagine the amount of whining and crying if President Obama had taken a shot through the ear? And like I say, I prayed that would never happen, and I still hope it will never happen. But for him to stand up there and divide America and continue to encourage hate for President Trump is one of the most despicable things that's happened this week in the convention.
Well, let me just say this, when I saw the entire convention and really no mention of that shot, I don't want to see any politician shot in the head, especially the president or the former president, et cetera. Had something happened to Biden, I would be just as worried about this country. And yet, like you said, not only was there no mention of it, it was still on the same talking points of Charlottesville, very fine people, white supremacy, bigotry, and then, of course, they threw in the dick jokes. Congressman, it has been a fantastic conversation. We hope to have you back on. We're going to take a quick break. 2 hours flies by here at TNT. We'll be back after this.
Thanks, Jay.
I was such a
Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and if you enjoyed that segment, I want to let you know that I am live 5 days a week over at TNT.news, and if you go there, you can also interact in the chat. It is 3 to 5 Eastern Time. We are global, baby. So again, if you dug that segment, please come check me out every Monday through Friday at TNT.news.